Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to our two-part interview with Frank Clegg, the former president of Microsoft Canada. If you haven't watched the first part that we presented yesterday on our YouTube platform here, Operation Freedom, please go back and do so. In this continuation of the interview, we speak about the 5G rollout and, again, the good and the bad and the ugly information that the bought-off lamestream fake media, the government bureaucrats, will never present. You see, folks, it's up to us to get the information out to our friends, our families, our neighbors, our co-workers. Not just to sit back on this information, but to get it out. We want everyone to be connected to the internet. We want everyone to be technologically savvy. This is a way we can grow our society, our country, our world. But we want to make sure it's being done safely. You see, my bag in medicine, in addition to being an orthopedic surgeon, recently retired, was also to work in the field of prevention. My field was injury prevention. Just one of our studies, according to the federal government, has prevented about 1.7 million Americans from being injured every year with a savings of $2 billion every year. Well, this is why I wanted to look at the 5G issues from a prevention standpoint. And that is what Frank Clegg does. He's an insider in the world of tech. He's also a very courageous individual. I hope you find the continuation of our interview to be helpful and empowering. Again, this interview is presented under the auspices, if you will, of our subscriber base at davejanda.com. Without our subscribers that pay 30 cents a day, this YouTube channel, my radio show Operation Freedom, and the davejanda.com platform, both the free side, the public side, and the subscription side would not exist. Now on to our interview with Frank Clegg. Thank you for your time today, and I appreciate you spending some time, and hopefully you'll find it worthy to network to anyone and everyone you know. Thank you for your time, and as we end every, if you will, introductory segment, dream big and dare to fail. Then she says, thank you, Donald Trump and A.J. Pitt, who's the head of the FCC, for your leadership in making sure all of America, including our great rural communities, are digitally connected. So I want to address this, Frank. Many people say, if you don't want to go with 5G, you want to keep people in rural communities in the dark. You don't want to have them part of this vast internet information system. Frank, what do you say to those people that put that back at you? Because she's assuming here that people in rural areas, the only way they can be connected is with 5G. Is that true?
No, absolutely not. There are people, we have a cottage in Northern Ontario, we're connected and we don't have any wireless.
Well, how do you do it?
Well, it's not a 5G implementation. What it is, there's a satellite connection, which is a slower speed, but they also now starting to implement where they're using the cell tower, which is a point-to-point connection to an area. The issue is when you do like a 5G, or they're talking about these mesh networks, everybody in the whole area gets bombarded 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with this radiation. When you start using these point-to-points, it's like the same as some smart meter implementation. Where the smart meter in our area outside of Toronto, it's a point-to-point system. So the smart meter has a connection to a tower that takes the data off of our smart meter. And we've had it measured, and there's very little radiation coming off that unit, as opposed to these mesh networks where you have 100 units set up, and then there's another layer where there's several hundred units. So you can implement it. The technology is available today where you can implement more of these, what I'll call point-to-point systems, where they are connected from your location to a remote tower, and that connection is secure, more secure than a broadband mesh network. And you don't need to have these towers, as we said before. They could be every 200 or 300 feet. So yes, you can implement rural communities. You do not have to have a blanket Wi-Fi type 5G implementation. You certainly don't have to use these millimeter implementations that 5G demands if we looked at it. But David, again, it goes back to nobody's pursuing that alternative. There's no incentive for the industry, my industry, to look at a better way to do it, because everybody's putting all their R&D into wireless, Wi-Fi, 5G, which is an easier way to implement it. Short-term cheaper, longer-term more expensive, based on Dr. Shockley's work. So I would say that, no, I don't accept you need the remote areas. They're not being abandoned if they don't get 5G.
And the only way we bring this push for this safer alternative is for people to become educated, empowered, and then let their elected representatives know, wait a minute, we're all for being connected. We're all for being connected, but we want to do it safer for our health and more secure. I mean, and let me put the conspiratorial hat on. A lot of these government officials, maybe they want it to be less secure. Frank, it's easier for them to tap in, right?
Well, it is for them, but also we know, David, for sure, there's a whole dark web going on out there where people are selling user IDs and usernames. And we know there are foreign countries that are investing hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars to try to hack into our infrastructure and to get a hold of our personal information. So the government may want to, I don't know, but I think more importantly, our governments in North America, Canada, the U.S., need to be worried about other countries that have no qualms about investing in hundreds of people trying to hack in and take control of our infrastructure or our banking systems or some of our key systems, or even getting a hold of billions of dollars or trillions of dollars of personal financial data. And so, first and foremost, we need to make sure that this network continues to be private and secure and unhackable and high reliability as well.
Frank, you are one of the top advocates in the world for utilizing technology, but doing it safer and better. I want to break this down. How educate our viewers and listeners. Three locations: home, school, and work or buildings, if you will. What needs to happen in those three locations? What need to be the components of those three?
Okay, I would say certainly on the environmental health trust, there's some safety tips. So from a home standpoint, think about your home being your safe haven. And in our home, believe it or not, I've been in the technology industry. I'm in my 5th decade. I've never had Wi-Fi connectivity in any home I've ever owned. Never had it. And I have daughters now that are in their 20s and 30s. So we went through the teenage years, and we got a 40-foot cable, and I hooked it into their laptop, and they sat on their bed, and my wife had bought some sort of protective material to protect their laps as they were sitting on their laptop. So I would do whatever I can to make sure when I go home at night and my kids come home from school, there is minimal RF radiation. So that says use your laptops, connect them hardwired if you can. If you can't, in some cases it's hard to get the wires. If it's an older home, then go to Home Depot and buy a timer and put the router on a timer so that when you go to bed at night, there's no Wi-Fi going on at all. Second thing is get rid of all the portable phones. Most people are getting rid of their landlines anyway, so if you still have them left, throw those things out. They're just a constant radiation emission machine. When it comes to your cell phone, do not have the cell phone in your bedroom at night. Not only from an RF radiation standpoint, but there are now studies that showing that the just mental exhaustion, get them away. Using a personal device like a cell phone, keep it away from your body. As we see at the Environmental Health Trust, distance is your friend. Get that device away. Do not put it near your head. Under no circumstances do you have the device on your head, in your pocket, in your bra, and in your pants pocket. Just get that thing away from your body. And we know that the FCC guidelines, most cell phones, not all, but 90% of the phones break FCC guidelines if you hold it to your head or put it in your pocket. They break it. They're meant to have a distance parameter, a distance between them. Smart meter, if you have a smart meter, get it tested to make sure that it's not emitting. If it is constantly emitting, make sure it isn't in an area of your house where you're like a bedroom or a TV room where you're sitting. Try to put it, if you have to pay to move it outside the garage or away from you as much as you possibly can. So that's the home. So just the mindset, the mantra has to be, make sure you get to your home, there's minimal amount of radiation, and eliminate as much as you can. In the school environment, the same thing. Any new school that's being built, David, should have internet cables throughout. The cheapest time to put in internet cables is when the electrician's already running all the wires and the plumbing's being run. If you have to do it in a school environment and you can't run cables everywhere, give the teacher the ability to turn the router off in the classroom, download the information the students need, turn the router off in the room, put all the tablets and PCs and laptops in, turn Wi-Fi off and turn them in airplane mode, do the lesson, and then upload the data. So that's cool. Work environment, a very similar thing. We're just working on publishing a paper. I hope it gets published for the building industry, making recommendations. So when you are building a new building or you're working in a building, think about the position of the routers. Think about putting them not anywhere near. Oh, the other thing, in your home. If you do have the router, make sure the darn thing's in the basement, not in your study where you're getting fried every day when you're working with it. Same as in classrooms. We used to be able to put a router out in the hallway. You start looking at these, they call them these mesh networks, where there could be 4 or 5 routers in one classroom.
No.
One classroom. And we used to put one of them out in the hall and it sufficed. So, and again, you can look at turning the power down. When my team goes in and implements something, they put everything on maximum power, maximum availability, maximum frequency, right? Well, we're a school here in the Oakville area where I live, where we were able to reduce the radiation in the school by 90%.
Wow.
And the students still have 100% connectivity to the internet. What did we do? We removed the routers and put them in different areas in the classroom, and we turned them down in terms of power. Same thing when you're designing a building. Think about it. First of all, if you can have an unsmart thermostat and an unsmart
right.
appliance, buy it. Same as your home. Why do you need a smart TV? Why do you need a smart toilet? Right? There is a cost. Yes, there is a convenience of having the refrigerator tag every device and sending a message to my shopping list. Be aware that your children and your family is being radiated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for that convenience. And I think people would say, you know what? I'm not sure it's worth it.
Right.
I'm not sure it's worth being able to turn my thermostat up in my house by constantly being Wi-Fi in the house. Or in our thermostats, they're hardwired into the internet, or they're not connected. So I'm rambling here, but
no.
Same in the office environment. If you're in the office environment, make sure you're not near a router. If you are near a router, ask to be positioned. Have somebody come in who understands this and measures it and say, look, we can turn all of these routers down in frequency if we don't need, and still provide availability and access. And as I said before, any application, first think about, can I do this hardwired? Why am I implementing it wireless? Do I really need it? What's the added benefit of me doing it wireless? And challenge that in every application that business has and everything that you're doing.
Well, and what's great about the solutions that you provide, many people will say, well, wait a minute, this is going to be cost prohibitive. Well, no. Moving a router, turning the frequency, that's not cost prohibitive. This isn't rewiring an entire 100-story building.
No, but David, actually, one of our volunteers runs a retail. He sells tiles to homes. When you're renovating a house, you go to his and so he has a warehouse in the back of his facility. And so he went out and he tested 10 routers, and he actually tested the RF radiation that came from, because he had to have Wi-Fi in the warehouse. You know that the cheapest router he found was the one that emitted the least amount of radiation.
Really?
And he bought these little boosters that were able to boost the signal that provided minimal increase in radiation. And his whole warehouse now provides all the Wi-Fi. He's able to ship all his product at significantly lower levels of radiation than was originally designed, and he did it cheaper. It took him a little time to find them. It took him a little bit of time to research it, but he was able to actually do that. So there are solutions out there that are cheaper and definitely safer. So,
Frank, here's the problem that comes up. If you start speaking about that there are some huge unanswered questions with 5G, there are some questions that have already been asked and answered as far as the health effects, the safety effects of 5G. And then you say, well, there are other alternatives. Some people might say, well, you're just anti-technology. Frank, you're the former president of Microsoft Canada. I would consider you not an anti-technology guy.
No. What we say is we are Canadians for safe technology, not no technology. Now, my industry doesn't like to hear about anything that's going to slow down the momentum. Right?
Right.
When I was working, we were very, very, you want to have first mover advances, you want to be first in the market, and then you want to keep adding features, adding functions, adding service that people will continue to use more and more and more. I'm not saying we should stop that. However, we should slow it down with the understanding that said, look, there may be a better way. Now, as I said earlier, to my industry, that's heresy. Me making this statement that says, hey, using words like slow it down, think about options, that is absolutely antithesis of anything from the business model of the technology industry. So people aren't going to want to hear that. But I think consumers need to understand that. I think government regulators need to understand that and force my industry. I use that word, I don't use it lightly. Need to force my industry to say, look, there's a better way to do this. You need to go find it, and you need to get it in the marketplace.
Frank, when I was involved in some research associated with certain products as related to injury, there were certain products out there touted as being safe and effective. And when we contacted those companies and said, send us your research, we want to see, because you have some pretty big claims here, marketing claims is for positivity and safety, they didn't have any. They had the marketing, but they didn't have the studies. So we did the studies, and we actually found that those products weren't as they were touted. Right? So the first thing that happened, we published this in peer-reviewed medical journals that these things really weren't as effective as these people said. First thing they threatened to do was sue us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And my response was, let's go to court because we have the peer-reviewed published studies. You don't. Let's go. Well, they didn't do that. And then they resorted at threatening me and our team. Okay. Have you faced similar problems? I'm sure you get blowback for what you do, I'm sure, from your industry, correct? Because I think it's important for people to hear this and know this.
I have had some, but I've been very lucky, and I'll touch wood with the statement, Dave. I haven't had any personal attacks yet. Right. I've had people that have, anybody can write a blog and anybody can write comments, and there's been some really hurtful, and I will use that word, hurtful statements made about me personally on a lot of blogs, and I just have stopped reading them because anybody can write a blog and you don't have to have any credentials or any credibility. But there hasn't been a credible source. First of all, there hasn't been a personal attack on myself or my family, so I'm grateful for that. I haven't been at any of the presentations that I've made. Nobody's come up to me afterwards and done anything inappropriate that I felt threatened or anything like that, so I've been lucky that way. And my industry, I have a lot of contacts in the industry, and I'd say 90% of them are coming back and saying, wow, we find this very interesting that you're doing this, you're taking this position. And then when I have a conversation with them, they say, well, good for you continuing to do this. So when people get the right information,
right,
and they invest the time to understand the right information and the source of that information, 99 times out of 100, they say, wow, that's interesting. I'd like to know more. I have more people coming to me saying, I kind of inherently know it's not good to put my cell phone to my head
right.
or to my pocket, or I know my children probably shouldn't be spending that much time. Thank you for giving us some guidelines on what to do or what not to do. There's some amazing, the American Pediatric Association has come out with guidelines on how much time kids should spend in front of screens, any screen, whether it's a TV screen or anything like that. Well, it's that kind of information that people need to understand. Don't hold it to your head. It sounds pretty straightforward, but people still do, right? Buy the earbuds and have it away from your body. Texting is such a beautiful thing. So to answer your question, no, I haven't been personally attacked, touch wood. I haven't been personally threatened. I've had people make a lot of comments, but so far, in general, as I say, if people spend the time to talk to me, they congratulate me and encourage me to continue it.
Frank, there is an entity that I call the bought-off lamestream fake media, not just in my country, the United States, not just your country, Canada, but the world. Has that entity, what I call the bought-off lamestream fake media, have they ever come to Frank Clegg, former president of Microsoft Canada, and said, Frank, you're talking about some issues related to 5G. You're talking about safer, better alternatives and enhancing folks' connectivity. Let's do a story on it. Have 60 Minutes, 2020, Washington Post, New York Times, you name, come to you and said, Frank, educate us and let's get this information out.
Now, none of the U.S. ones have, but the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, has a program called Marketplace, which is similar to 60 Minutes. Mm-hmm. And we did a segment with them last summer. And they're up to now over 2 million hits, which from a Canadian standpoint is huge.
It is.
And it was actually a very fact-finding. My only wish I wish the reporter, who did an incredibly thorough job. In fact, what she did, she went out and bought 3 of the most popular cell phones. She went to Berkeley, California, which has this right to know legislation that if you're selling a phone in Berkeley, you have to have a notice that say FCC guidelines suggest you have to use this appropriately or you may cause harm, right? Or the words to that effect, right? And so what she did was she bought the 3 most popular phones in that area, went to the organization that tests them for the industry, had them test them at the guidelines that say, hey, keep it anywhere from a half an inch to an inch away from your body. But then she had the people who were testing it test them right against the machine, in other words, with no separation. All 3 phones, Dave, were 3 to 4 times higher than FCC regulations. We can debate whether the FCC regulations are 20 years old and need to be improved. This is the current regulations, right? When we went to Health Canada with that, they said, well, we have a buffer, so it's okay. Right?
Yeah,
and
right.
so, I wish Wendy Mesley is a reporter. She's a seasoned veteran, a major reporter. I wish she'd have been more hard-hitting with her conclusion.
Yeah.
But she did get the facts out there. And the other thing her survey showed was that 80% of people didn't realize that there were these warnings that are buried inside the cell phone, either inside the phone or inside telling you to keep away from your body. People don't even know about it. And so, yes, that's the only documentary that's been done, very thorough, very fact-finding. I'd love to have, it wasn't just me. She talked to Dr. Deborah Davis, who's the founder of Environmental Health Trust, and Dr. Davis was one of the scientific writers of Al Gore's team that won the Nobel Peace Prize. So very distinguished, very veteran. So, if anybody did something like 60 Minutes or somebody came to that, I think I should be a small segment of that discussion. I think people like Dr. Davis, Anthony Miller, you mentioned Dr. Melnick, who really ran the NTP study. There are dozens of incredibly world-class experts on this issue, Dave, that have done the research. Mm-hmm. We just lost a major one, Dr. Martin Blank out of Columbia. He spent 40 years, and he proved at the DNA level there's damage. At the DNA level, right? So we now have it at the DNA level. We now have people out of McGill University showing explaining how it works. Now you've got the NTP study. So yeah, it would be great to have 60 Minutes or somebody come forward and say, hey, we'd like to really research this.
It could really affect their advertising revenue, though, Frank, if they do that. I know it sounds, but I'm telling you, it time and time again, we're doing stuff on our platform. Other people are doing investigative work on their platforms in the alternative media. Yet, where's the mainstream? And unfortunately, the mainstream is too consumed with how much money they would lose if they did this type of investigation and work. Frank, let's conclude the interview, and I thank you so much for your time. You've been very generous. Educate our listeners and viewers on the organ of which you were the founding CEO, the Canadians for Safe Technology. Educate our viewers and listeners because they need to keep following your efforts and the efforts of your organization.
I'd like to I'll talk about C4ST and I'll also talk about the Environmental Health Trust. So, Base for Safe Technology, we have 2 mandates. Our website is c4st.org, C4st.org. Our primary goal is to educate Canadians and North Americans about how to use this technology safely. And so there are, right at the top of our website, there are, tips and guidelines on how to use it. And I talk about most keeping away from your head, things like that. So that's what we're about. Second thing that we do is we are an advocacy group. So we work with all 3 levels of government, municipal, provincial, and federal, on changing the guidelines and updating the guidelines because it's been since the 1980s before that any major changes have been impacted. The other organization that I joined 2 years ago is the Environmental Health Trust, a U.S.-based organization. And there's really 3 things that we do. One is we do the work to educate and inform people. We spend more time on an international effort in terms of being aware of what's going on internationally. C4ST, we focus on what's going on in Canada, whereas Environmental Health Trust, if you want to know, when you talk about what's going on in Belgium about 5G, or France, or Italy, Environmental Health Trust has that information. Second thing we do is we do advocacy work with the Environmental Health Trust as well. The third thing that we do is we are actually funding some of this high-level research as well.
Great.
So I mentioned this study by the Razmazzi Institute that really verified the NTP work and actually did a little bit more and went a little bit deeper than the $25 million study. Environmental Health Trust was part of helping fund that. So those 2 organizations, if you want to, the most current Environmental Health Trust we've been able to invest a little bit more on the website, so I would start with and it's ehtrust.org.
Okay,
So,
E as in egg, H as in happy, trust.
.org.
.org.
Yes.
ehtrust.org.
Yeah, environmental health. So E for environmental, H for health, T for trust.org. And there's some really good information on 5G there. A great amount of summaries of information on 5G. A lot of work on what's going on internationally. So if people want to get educated, I would start with Environmental Health Trust, quite frankly. And then if you're Canadian, you come to the C4ST.
Well, and I found as a North American anyway, you're Canadian. You're Canadian for Safe Technology is a great site, and that's C as in Charlie, number 4, not written out, number 4, ST safetechnology.org. So C number 4 ST.org and E as in egg, H as in happy, trust.org.
Correct.
Frank, I'd like to thank you for everything you have done, are doing, and will do. You are incredibly courageous. You're a very humble, modest man. You're very courageous because you are looking out for every person of the world. You're looking to empower every person of the world, but in the same process, you're actually, and some I understand will disagree, you're looking out for the industry as well.
Well, yeah, no, that's actually, David, I appreciate your comments. I fundamentally believe there is a win-win in this scenario. I am not saying stop using technology. What I am saying, though, because, at the end of the day, as citizens of North America, if these health effects continue, we end up paying the price. If you're taking cancer treatment today, the cost can be anywhere from $100,000 to over $1 million. We know these devices can cause cancer. And industry is only going to have to pay higher taxes for it as well. And, the people who run these organizations, I've met, certainly when I was in my role, I met all my peers in the Canadian organizations, and I met a lot of U.S.-based executives, like the Michael Dells and the Bill Gates of the world. These are genuine fathers who want to do the right thing, right? And so I think if they got a hold of this and they found out about it, they too would want to say, look, let's look at finding safer, cheaper, more private and more secure ways to do it as well. So I am advocating more aggressively now than I started 5 years ago for my industry to wake up and do something about it, because I do think that my industry can do this.
I agree.
I think we can have a win-win, David. I honestly believe you can be the most connected. North America can be the most connected organizations in the world, and we can do it in the safest way that people aren't going to be hurt.
Frank, 30 years ago, I founded an organization that is still in existence today, the Institute for Preventative Sports Medicine, where we focus on the prevention of injuries. And we have a saying there. When it comes to prevention, because this is about prevention, what you're speaking about as well. When it comes to prevention, caring is the first step. But for it to be more than empty rhetoric, action must follow. Frank, you have given every listener and viewer an action plan of what they can do at home, at school, in their workplace, and in their community. You have provided them information, what I call the bought-off lamestream fake media has not done, other than that one report from CBC, and let's give them a lot of credit for doing that. But what we will do, Frank, is our goal is to network this information to millions of people around the world, and that they can then, as part of their action plan, contact their local governmental representatives, their regional, their state, their national representatives, and say, look, we're awake.
Right.
We want to be connected. We don't want to live in the dark ages, as some people accuse. We want to continue to be enlightened with the use of technology, but we want to do it safely.
I agree.
Frank, we also have another saying, and you are the actual epitome of it. Dream big and dare to fail. I would like to thank you, Frank, for dreaming big and daring to fail, and in the process, enabling every person that listens to what the information you provide, it enables them to become better and safer. And I thank you for that, Frank.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I really appreciate that. We're working hard. We're trying.
Well, I know you are, Frank. So, again, the websites C4ST.org, E as in egg, H as in happy, trust.org. I'd like to thank you, Frank, and I'd like to thank you folks for listening, joining us today. I'd like to thank you for your time. We do a tremendous amount on the DaveJanda.com platform, a lot of information on the prevention side of the equation when it comes to healthcare as well. You're always welcome to join Frank on his sites, on the DaveJanda.com site as well. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.